The Iowa Hawkeyes move back to 500 in the Big Ten with an impressive display. 68-51. I'm impressed. And I see a couple comments here early, and we'll talk about the offense. But I'm telling you this right now. If you told me that this team would be 4-4 in the Big Ten, especially after that 0-2 start, if you told me that back in November, December, I'd have taken it. And they got a shot now again next weekend to beat Penn State again and realistically be 5-5, which is halfway to an NCAA tournament spot. So let's talk about this game. Iowa, of course, with the big bounce back in the second half as far as rebounding. First half, not so good. Iowa struggling on the boards mightily. At one point, it was 20-5 on the glass. That's going to get you beat almost every time. But when you bounce back in the second half and get some really good production from the likes of Philip Rebracha, Keegan Murray, and Chris Murray, certainly that helps. Eric, are you worried about our offense? I am not, okay? So let's pump the brakes on the worry here, and I'll explain why. And we expect to be joined by Coach Close, who was at the game today. We expect him to be calling in here in a little bit. But let me explain why I am not concerned right now about this offense. Certainly, this team is going to need to play more defense than probably any Fran team in the past 3 to 4 years. We understand that. I also think it's equipped to play better defense than any Fran team has in the past several years. But here's why I'm not worried about the offense. If you're just looking at numbers in conference, okay, and those are really the numbers we care about now. Penn State is the third best defensive team in the conference. Okay, we're talking defensive scoring. Right? Third best in the conference. They're allowing just 66.9 points per game. Rutgers is second in the conference, allowing 65 points per game. Indiana is number one in the conference, allowing 64 points per game. So the point is, especially the Rutgers and Penn State games, because Iowa's had fairly low scoring outputs in those two games, I am not concerned about it. So again, we can talk more about this, but overall, you can argue that Iowa just got done playing two of the three best defensive teams in the Big Ten these last two games. I'm not concerned. They did put up 68 points, which isn't a bad number. I understand you're at home and the Penn States, people perceive Penn State a certain way. They're one of the three best teams. Really, if you look at the numbers, one of the three best teams in the Big Ten as far as scoring defense. All right, making sure we've got Coach Close here. And then we'll open up the call line following our segment with Coach. And again, Coach was down in Iowa City for this game, and I'm really anxious to hear from him. I thought this was, by the way, the best defensive performance that Iowa had all season. And people are going to throw that Rutgers game at him. He scored 48 points. Well, Penn State only scored, 51 tonight? This, in my opinion, was the best defensive performance Iowa had of the season. I thought the first half was the best defensive half Iowa has had all season. They've had some good halves. Haven't always put it together for a full 40 minutes. I thought the Minnesota second half was really good defensively. And I believe we have Coach Gary Close. Gary, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Coach?
Sure can, Corey.
Coach, appreciate you calling in. I guess we can start with this. Iowa with a much-needed home win, and I just made the statement before we got you live here that I thought this was actually Iowa's best defensive performance of the season. Now, some people may argue their last game out on Wednesday against Rutgers was. I thought Iowa really played good half-court defense in that first half and throughout most of the game. What did you think of Iowa defensively?
I agree with you, Corey. They're definitely improving. And it's been important the last couple of games for their offense to struggle a little bit. And if they hadn't played good defense, the situation might have been even worse. So that's a good sign because you're going to have nights where the shots aren't dropping. And we had stretches of that tonight. And the defense, in some cases, kept them close. In other cases, kept the lead. So it's a good sign.
And one of our listeners here early asked the question, are we worried about the offense? And simple response is no. If you look at the conference stat rankings, if you will, Rutgers is second in the conference in defensive scoring, in points allowed. And then Penn State is third. So these are arguably two of the top three defenses in the Big Ten that Iowa has played. Are you concerned about the offense? At this point, I am not.
No, I don't think so. You get lulls, in a game and in a season, and they had a lot of shots that rimmed and came out, and I thought they actually were a little bit better than the other night, especially early, a little crisper and started both halves, and just got to try to sustain it. But no, I don't think it's a. I think they'll break out of it. They're too good a shooting team to miss the kind of shots they're missing. So fortunately, their defense is holding them in, and as we said, extending some leads, and like you mentioned, they have gone against two real good defensive teams. So, and they got another one coming in here Thursday, a pretty physical team, and so. But hey, to get this win is big. It's a good win to pick up.
And I had noted here, Gary, just from the second Penn State possession, excellent man-to-man defense from 0 to 30 as far as the shot clock is concerned, forced a shot clock violation. And I thought they really set the tone early in the half court, and their rotations were crisp and clean. And that's maybe the best that I've seen them rotate. Now, Penn State, on the flip side, is if you look at the numbers, maybe the worst team in the Big Ten as far as scoring. They do rank last in the conference in scoring within conference games, but Iowa was crisp early and throughout the game, rotating. How important is it, Gary, to establish that early in a game like this?
Oh, for sure. You give a team confidence, and then they can play better than they're capable of playing. So you want to make it difficult and send a message that every possession is going to be a grind. And I thought they did a better job of staying in front of the ball. They didn't have as many breakdowns with containing dribble penetration. And Penn State's not a great three-point shooting team, so you don't want to be getting beat off the dribble with a team that's not a terrific three-point shooting team. So a good effort, a good solid effort, without fouling. And Penn State had very few real good clean looks, and that's to Iowa's credit.
And honestly, the first half, I mean, you can talk about the canceling effect. And correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, if you force, 13 turnovers, which Iowa did in the first half, you're probably going to have a double-digit lead unless you don't rebound at all. And that's kind of what Iowa did. At one point, it was 20-5, the deficit in the rebounding category. Are those two stats kind of canceling as far as, do they kind of cancel each other out?
Yeah, the rebounding hurt a little bit early. But I thought they rebounded much better in the second half.
Yes, they did.
I think at both ends, Iowa only had one offensive rebound in the first half. I think they had maybe double digits
they had
offensive
10
rebounds in the second half. Yeah, half. And that hurt them. And when you're not shooting the ball well, then go get it and put it back in or draw a foul, and that's what you need to do. And defensively, they were much better on the boards. That's really how Penn State stayed in the game, was with their offensive rebounding in the first half.
Yeah, it was a 12-point deficit in the rebounding category in that first half. And Penn State with 8 offensive rebounds in the first half to Iowa's 1. And you're right, Gary. Iowa ends up evening that stat out 11-11 and actually out-rebounded the Nittany Lions. That's an incredible stat given the deficit they dug themselves in that first. So 37-34, Iowa really turned it around at halftime. I do have a question about the crowd, Gary. I mean, obviously it was packed. I know this is kind of the Kevin Kugler and the commentators on BTN kind of described it as a slugfest. It was hard for the crowd to really have moments where it exploded, but certainly it was good to see a packed house. What did you think of the crowd?
Oh, that was great. It was a great college basketball game. Atmosphere was great. It's really good to see this place completely full, and I think it helped the team. I think it's what college basketball is all about, and every game from here on out is really important, especially at home. You just can't afford to give too many away at home, so you want to use every means you can to get some kind of an advantage, and getting a good home crowd is certainly one of them. So that's encouraging. Hopefully they can keep it up.
And you hope that this next game against Purdue, I still think there's a good chance Purdue's the best team in the Big Ten. That certainly is debatable at this point, but boy, they need a crowd on Thursday against the Boilermakers. And I do have one other thing to ask you, Gary, and we're going to let you travel home. But in regards to Keegan Murray, I thought he kind of struggled at times. Certainly, defenses are trying to figure out ways to slow him down. But here's a weird stat, and I went back and traced this during the game. So during the non-conference, Keegan Murray shot 56 free throws and made 48 of them for an 86% mark. Now, that's just non-conference, including the 3 games they played or 4 games they played after the 2-game Big Ten start. So in conference play, Keegan is, heading into this game, was 15 of 26. So if you do the math on that, that's 58% from the free throw line. That's a huge drop. What would you attribute that to?
That's a good question. Maybe just a little bit of a slump. I think he'll bounce. I think it's a bit more physical, for sure. They might have something to do with it. Maybe he's playing a few more minutes and wearing down a little bit, and obviously driving to the hoop and posting up. It's a much more physical game now than it would be in the non-conference, and some of it might be a little bit of confidence. You get on a streak, you feel good when you get a few rim out. Not so good. So hopefully, he can start knocking a few down and get on the streak again, which, the way he shoots shouldn't be a problem. So he'll bounce out. He's too good of a shooter to keep that up.
And speaking
the
of
other thing I want to mention, Corey, I heard on the last telecast, maybe it was, that Iowa is the only school, maybe in the history of college basketball, I could be wrong on that, that's had now has the leading scorer, both men's and women's basketball.
Yeah.
Which is really incredible. You're lucky to have a leading scorer one time.
Right.
And then you've got in either men or women, and now you got the leading scorer in the same year,
right.
Which, these people should appreciate that and get out and watch these two teams play, because that's probably not going to happen again anywhere. It's pretty cool. It's pretty unique to see, and for Iowa, they should be real proud of that.
And to be honest, Iowa put on a show up in Minneapolis. I'm talking about the women just a couple days ago. And, of course, they'll play at home tomorrow. So I expect a pretty lively atmosphere in Carver again tomorrow. And speaking of bouncing back, I thought Jordan Bohannon played well. Patrick McCaffrey played well. And Chris Murray, who's been pressing ever since that 29-point performance 2 games ago. I thought he came out and made a couple threes and hopefully got off the schneid, so to speak, with his confidence. And Gary, you move on and you're 4-4. I think you're right on pace right now for what you need for the tournament.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, Corey, that was good to see is there was more balance. There was 4 players in double figures, and I think Liberace was 1 bucket off of that. So that's a good sign. So I think there were a lot of positives, and that's what they got to build on going into Thursday.
All right, Coach. Appreciate the time, and travel safely back to Wisconsin, and hopefully we talk to you Thursday.
Well, if I feel like I'm out of breath, they're pushing me out of the gym, so I'm walking up these big stairs. So.
Oh, yeah, those stairs will do it to you. So take a break before you take the long trek to your car.
Enjoy the win and hopefully get one Thursday.
Thanks, Coach. Travel safely. Thank you.
See you, Corey. You bet. Yep. Bye.
Coach Gary Close on the line. We appreciate him taking the time, especially when you're walking up those big Carver stairs. I'm sure everybody here knows exactly what that's like. So, again, impressive performance for the Hawkeyes. I'm not going to say it was perfect, but I do think it was the best defensive performance Iowa's had all year. And I'll debate that. If somebody wants to call and say Iowa played better defensively Wednesday, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I think they played good Wednesday defensively. I thought they played very good today. Defensive rebounding in the first half was a problem, but when you bounce back in the second half the way they did, they just got to figure out how to be more consistent on the boards. Consistency is where this team's at right now. We've seen Chris be able to go off from 3. We've seen Patrick McCaffrey make threes. We've seen Tony Perkins. But Tony Perkins was actually shooting the 3 ball really well early in Big Ten play, and he's leveled up. They can get things to click together, and I don't think they all have to click at the same time, right? I mean, literally, like against Rutgers, Iowa was 2 points and a couple of bad foul calls away from winning that game when they got almost no production offensively from anybody. I mean, if you look back at that Rutgers game, and give credit to Rutgers, but Keegan Murray chips in 13, Patrick with 11. There was nobody else in double figures. Philip Abracha had 10 boards with 8 points, so he played really well in that game. But to me, what this team needs is they just need somebody to be that second scorer, because, teams are going to continue to figure out ways to slow Keegan Murray down. And if he is a lottery pick, if he's a lock first round, which I think at this point you'd have to argue he is a lock for the first round. If he is that, he will continue to find ways to adjust and be great, because I think he is one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the Big Ten Conference, maybe in the country. But you need to help him. And certainly, like Gary brought up, there were a lot of guys that helped him tonight. And just 68 points scored. But when you play defensively like Iowa played, Penn State shot just 33% from the field. That is a really good number. And you can say they missed open shots. They missed a few in the second half. But I thought the first half, actually, they made tough shots. Iowa forced them into difficult shots. And very encouraged by this performance today, folks. Again, this is a game you had to grind out and win. But the way Iowa did it, again, defensively, I don't want to get ahead of myself because certainly we brought that up too. Penn State and Rutgers, by the numbers, are two of the worst teams in the Big Ten as far as scoring. That's a fact. That's not me being Debbie Downer. That's a fact. But at the same time, I saw crisper rotations than I've seen from Iowa all year, and maybe in years. You could argue that. But the first half, Iowa really worked hard defensively. Got to figure out how to rebound the ball better. But again, they did that in the second half, so very encouraged there. Give us a call. Our line is open, 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. We're talking Iowa's 68-51 victory over the Penn State Nittany Lions. Jakob 22 is here with us. Very solid win. Ray says he's worried about the whole team, thinks we are sunsetting. I'm not. I just disagree. I've been on the other side of it, Ray. I've had people heaping praise. I mean, Rutgers, I wasn't real encouraged about anything after that game on Wednesday. Now, some people are going to argue that Iowa played really good defense. I thought Rutgers missed a lot of shots. They missed a lot of layups. I'm not saying Iowa played bad defensively, but again, I thought Iowa played really well defensively, and Penn State made tough shots in that first half to stay in it. And again, you get out rebounded by as much as Iowa did, you're going to let a team hang around. But again, Iowa just tremendous and not turning the ball over. We keep talking about it. Iowa with just 10 turnovers today, and Penn State with 17. So they're going to win that battle almost every night. If they don't win that battle, you got a problem. But again, very good performance from Iowa on both ends tonight, and doesn't have to be perfect offensively when you can lock down an opponent. And I mean that's just common sense. That's common basketball sense. And Iowa's discovering the power of that now. These last two games, being able to play effectively on both ends. Jordan struggled on glass, no rebound opportunities on the 13 turnovers we caused in the first half. Yeah, those are just offsetting, right? They cancel each other, canceling properties, if you will. If you're forcing a bunch of turnovers, it's hard to lose unless you're giving up tons of rebounds, and that's what Iowa was doing the first half. And despite the rebounding struggles, and I don't have the final box score in front of me to break down the two halves, but despite the rebounding struggles, I believe Iowa got out rebounded by 12 in that first half. Despite those struggles, Iowa was still leading by 5 at halftime. That's how powerful turnovers are. But again, you could argue Iowa could have very easily been up by 10, 11, 12 if you grab a few of those rebounds. But again, clean the things up. That's exactly what you want from a halftime break, is to clean up what was killing Iowa in that first half. Brian, J-Bos giving Patrick the turnover on the shot clock violation at the end of the game. What a guy. I did see that. I know it was brought up on the broadcast. I don't know if that's exactly what he was doing. I did find it interesting. J-Bo's a point guard at heart, right? Whether you want to argue that he's a true point guard or not, he's a point guard at heart, so you don't want an extra turnover on that stat sheet. Don, the Murrays and Joe T would be my 30-minute guys. I would start to agree with you. For certainly the Murrays, Chris has been in a funk these last two games. Ever since that Indiana coming out party, I thought Chris has sort of played tentative again. But he's young. He's a true sophomore. He didn't play much last year. I would agree with you on Joe T. I think he's providing him really good energy, and he's not really turning the ball over. He had the play in the first half where he stole the ball and then slid out of bounds, which is kind of a Joe Toussaint play to make. But he's given him really good production. Let me pull up his box score. So Joe Toussaint with, 4 points, 4 assists, just 2 turnovers. And that's the key. I mean, certainly you'd like to get a few more assists out of Joe. But the fact of the matter is he's only turning the ball over twice. I mean, see what he did against Rutgers, and he may have turned it over more against Rutgers. Let me pull up the numbers for Joe Toussaint against Rutgers. Joe Toussaint, with just 3 turnovers against Rutgers and 5 assists. Those are numbers Fran McCaffery's going to take because he is so aggressive defensively. He is a dog. He works hard. Certainly he's quick. He can stay in front of break it down type point guards in this league, and certainly he's done that. And he's right now he's playing with confidence. For the first time in his career, I feel like he's playing with confidence pretty much everywhere. No, he doesn't have a killer jump shot. He can make shots in the lane at times. He's got the mid-range game. But again, he's giving Iowa a lot on the defensive end. And if you're not turning the ball over a lot, I mean, he's going to play most of the game. So I would agree with that. Ulis is struggling a bit. He sometimes, at times he makes eye-popping plays where his vision is on display. And other times it seemed like he doesn't really have a final destination when he drives the ball. He did that once in the first half. But again, true sophomore. Didn't play a lot last year. So it's understandable. Good to see you here, Gary. Appreciate the support. All thumbs. The team is always better when Chris is on the floor. When is Fran going to wake up and make him a starter? That's a fair assessment, and I will say this. Chris did not play very much these last two games, which I thought was strange. You play really well against Indiana. He had, 29 and 13 or something like that. He was terrific against the Hoosiers, and then he comes back against Minnesota, played 11 minutes, and played 10 minutes against Rutgers. I don't quite understand why that was because, again, offensively, I thought they could have used him against Rutgers. So I'm a little bit surprised by Fran only playing Chris 10 minutes, but again, I mean, he certainly is a guy who can get them production when he's out there. So I would expect that Fran is just kind of trying to play the hot hand and didn't feel that Chris was on these last two games, but certainly played a lot better tonight. Chris Murray, let me pull up the final numbers here for Chris. Chris ended up with 13 points, 4 boards on just 5 shots in 20 minutes of play. And that's probably about what he's going to get. I'm surprised by the 10 and 11 minute outputs he's had these last couple of games. But tonight, again, the 20 minutes played were all quality minutes. And I thought he came in second half and really helped them on the glass. I know just 4 rebounds, but his aggressive mentality on the glass with Philip Rebraca on the bench was just huge. Brad Till, this is an excellent comment. I've got written down in my notes, Brad. You could make the argument. Now, some people may laugh at this. You could make the argument that Philip Rebraca is the second best player on this team right now. And that's not an insult to anybody else. Philip Rebraca is working hard. He is by far their best rebounder. Now, he didn't lead the team in rebounding tonight. 5 boards, 8 points, 4 of 5 from the field. He's starting to really show his efficiency offensively. And, man, he just is a physical guy. I think he might be one of their better defenders, too. This is turning into a team that, there are weak spots defensively at times. But, man, I think they've got some really good individual defenders with Joe Toussaint, Philip Rebraca. I think Connor McCaffrey's defending better than I've seen him defend. Tony Perkins, the Murray twins are both good defensively. Aaron Ulis. I know Jordan's going to struggle. Jordan Bohannon's always going to struggle. He struggled a couple times on the perimeter today with allowing dribble penetration. You're going to have to live with that. I think he's working hard. I'm not going to diss Jordan. I think he's working hard. Patrick McCaffrey, he's been solid defensively as well. I think this is turning into a decent defensive team. Iowa, if you look at KenPom ratings, which I love Ken Pomeroy's ratings. I think they're tremendous because, again, they're not just a matter of you can look up offensive and defensive efficiency numbers, but they don't tell the whole story when you're not weighing strength of schedule. And that's what Ken Pomeroy's ratings do. They take into account the schedule you have played. And before the Rutgers game, Iowa was down around 160, ranked 160 in the country in defensive efficiency, adjusted to the strength of schedule that Iowa had played. And after that Rutgers game, which of course they held Rutgers to 48 points, Iowa shot up to around 100. That's a huge, huge jump. I can't even tell you how big of a jump that is because I monitor Ken Pomeroy's ratings, and it makes sense. This late in the season, it would make sense that that's a big jump. And Iowa ended up near 100. Now, I have not checked. I don't know if Ken Pomeroy, how quickly he updates his stats. I'll give you the current numbers as is noted at this moment. Iowa right now has moved up again. So Iowa now up to 91 in the country in adjusted defensive efficiency. 91. That's a 70-plus spot jump in 2 games. Okay. Now it's going to be harder to keep moving up once you get, up into that top 75. Hopefully Iowa can do that. They're playing a really good offensive team in Purdue on Thursday. If you want to look at the numbers, Purdue is the second best team in the Big Ten in scoring behind Illinois. at 77.3 points per game. So Purdue, that's going to be a heck of a contest. We saw Iowa play them well without Keegan. Now the transitive property, or whatever you want to call it, by saying, well, Keegan didn't play in that game, they'll beat him with Keegan. I wouldn't go that far. I still think Purdue's the best team in the Big Ten. Iowa has not traditionally played well against Purdue under Fran. But certainly, I'd give them a shot. And at home, if they can get a crowd in there Thursday night, I hope people show up to that game like they showed up today. Iowa will have an opportunity. Boy, you win that game, you're looking at potentially 6-4 if you can take care of business against Penn State, which will be tough because it's on the road. But certainly have an opportunity to get some momentum building here in January. All right. Getting back to your comments here, and I did just get the box score from the university, so we'll take a quick look at that as well. The man here, perhaps at 500, but certainly anything over 500 in Big Ten play is a lock for the tournament. The man here, I think 500 is a lock. I think that's a lock. I think they're 10-10. They're in. Now you can say the non-conference schedule wasn't strong. They're in. They're 10-10. I'm pretty confident they're in. I would just be very, very much. I'd be very much surprised if they were to be left a 10-10 Big Ten team that knocked off Virginia on the road and a good Utah State team on a neutral court. I know the schedule wasn't tough overall in the non-conference, but I think this is a team that makes the tournament at 10-10. And I think 9-11. You know, you probably can't draw that line in the sand at this point, but I think 9-11, you're probably going to have to win a game or two in the Big Ten tournament. But I'd be pretty happy with 10-10. Now, you go 10-10, you lose in the first round of the Big Ten tournament, then I'm sweating a bit on Selection Sunday. I'll tell you that. I'm sweating a bit on Selection Sunday, but I still think they're in. If regardless of what they do in the Big Ten tournament, if you're at 500, I see Iowa getting in. Doug, last year, Michigan State and Maryland both made the tournament with losing records in the Big Ten. If Iowa finishes 500 in the Big Ten, they're in. I would agree with that. All thumbs. Looks like Hawkeye Elvis put on a few pounds. He may have to let the jumpsuit out a bit. We just did a podcast over at the Nebraska Hawks Nest. We guested on that show here a few weeks ago, and I thought Elvis looked good. I thought Mr. Hawkeye Elvis looked good on that show. So I don't know what you're saying, all thumbs. Hope this gets back to Hawkeye Elvis. No, I think he looked good out there. Now, did they show him on the television? I didn't see him tonight on the broadcast, so maybe you were there at the game, all thumbs, but did not see him on the broadcast. Eric, congrats to the guy who sank the half-court shot for an Iowa football season ticket. Absolutely. Gary, Michigan State plays well in pressure games. Man, do they ever. They did it last night. It seems like every year when Iowa is starting to get excited, when Iowa fans are starting to get excited about Iowa's chances to win those bigger games, it's almost Iowa hardly ever gets it done against Michigan State. Once in a while, I think they did it last year at Michigan State. But man alive, it's going to be difficult to beat Michigan State, and it's crazy what they do year in and year out with Tom Izzo. They are always in that top 2 or 3, and that's so difficult to do in this conference. To be able to finish in the top 2 to 3 almost year in and year out, and that's basically what Michigan State does. Yeah, the stairs never get easy. All thumbs. Rebracha improving every game. Absolutely. And again, the rebounding is the biggest thing he's giving them right now. He's nifty inside, but he's starting to adjust. It seems like he's started to adjust to the Big Ten level. And I think he was struggling with that through 2 months. And now that we've hit January, he's hit it full on, and I think he's playing well. Earl Hayden says an Amani Hooker INT. I don't have the score of that Bengals-Titans game, so nobody tell me. Well, you'll probably tell me anyways. Jordan, going to be tough on the road for everyone everyone this year. Looks, I don't know what this is trying to say, but Minnesota lost or won today at home. Maryland won last night against Illinois. You're right. So the Minnesota win for Iowa, Jordan, is looking good. And you're right. Every Big Ten road game is going to be difficult. You and I are on the same page. I've been saying that now for weeks. The Big Ten, I think it's the best conference in the country. Maybe I'm falling for the bait, but again, I don't think you can read too much into the NCAA struggles last year, which the Big Ten did have. I think it's the best conference in America, and I think the Big 12 is right with them. You know, I think that the Big 12 and the Big 10 are sort of what in basketball are kind of what the Big 10 and the SEC are in football. But I think the SEC is probably a notch above the Big 10 in football. I don't think you can necessarily say that about basketball. I think that both of those conferences are really good. And certainly, again, an opportunity for Iowa next Saturday to get a road win. I think they win Thursday. It's almost a steal because I don't expect them to win that game. Not saying they can't, but you win that game and you get an excellent opportunity to get to 6-4. All right. 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601 is our number. And certainly we can talk Iowa's win today. We can look ahead to Purdue. Gary says, latter part of Hawks' schedule looks really tough. It's tougher, yeah, certainly, because think about it. I mean, you got Rutgers already, who, surprisingly, they're actually right now in the upper echelon of the Big Ten. But it was a game that you thought Iowa could probably win, certainly playing Penn State twice in January. Again, we're looking at everybody's going to be tough, but if you're talking about the more difficult games, you're talking the likes of Purdue, Illinois, Michigan, Michigan State. I know Michigan's been struggling. Purdue. Now they got Illinois and Purdue early, but again, they got Rutgers, they got Penn State, they got Maryland already, they got Indiana, who's tough, but again, at home, that was a winnable game. Now they do get Nebraska in the second half of the schedule, but again, they get Purdue Thursday, and looking ahead to February, they get Ohio State on the road, they get Michigan State at home. I don't know. I mean, it's a workable schedule, Gary. I think it's a workable schedule. They get Michigan on the road and Illinois on the road. That Illinois game on the road is going to be tough. There's no question. The Ohio State game on the road is going to be real tough. But, I mean, are we going to sit here and say that we couldn't see Iowa going on the road and beating Maryland? Going on the road beating Nebraska? I have no reason to think that. They have a 3-game homestand with Nebraska, Michigan, and Michigan State. That's going to be a big stretch, right? You've got to win at least one of those games. Probably 2 of those games, because you don't want to drop. First of all, I'm not predicting Iowa goes 0-3 in that stretch, but Michigan State, I don't care where you're playing them, it's going to be a tough game. And certainly I'd say the same thing about Michigan. So you got to take care of business against Nebraska. And if you could steal one of those other 2 Michigan games, boy, that'd be huge to the resume. And then they go back to Lincoln on the 25th of February. But, I think Iowa, I'd have to compare schedules. I haven't really looked at schedules throughout the Big Ten. I think Iowa's probably played it probably has one of the more favorable schedules overall. I'm trying to think here. They do get Illinois twice. They get Purdue twice. But I believe they get Ohio State once. That's a plus. They get Indiana once. I think that's a plus. So, I mean, they get Michigan State once. And they get them at home. So I think those are all good things. And again, I think if you're in the Big Ten, I don't care what your non-conference looks like, I think you're going to get in at 10-10. Eric, if defense continues to consistently improve, this may be the best Iowa defense in years and could take them deep in the tournament when they are aggressive on both offense and defense. Look out. I'll tell you this, Eric, assuming the defense can continue to do what they're doing, and you said it yourself, consistency is what you're looking for, because I didn't think Iowa played very well defensively in the first half against Minnesota last week. So just a week ago, I didn't feel like they played great in the first half on that end. But these you could argue now, Iowa's played 5 straight really good halves defensively. Second half against Minnesota, both halves against Rutgers, and both halves against Penn State. So I would agree with you. I would absolutely agree with you. Jordan Bohannon's got to figure out a way to get more shots up, get more. He's 5 of 26. They mentioned that stat. Over these last few games, he's been 5 of 26. Now he did make a couple to help those numbers during this game, but he's struggling from outside. And if Peyton Sandford, he didn't even see the floor tonight. So where do the 3-point shots come from? Is it Chris Murray? Is it Keegan Murray? Certainly Jordan's got to make them. Connor is still struggling from 3. Joe Toussaint is not a commodity that you want to rely on from outside. And you could say the same thing about Ulis and Perkins. I was expecting when Iowa nabbed Philip Rebracha, I expected Philip to be at least a threat from outside, and Iowa doesn't seem real concerned about getting him looks at all. So maybe I'm wrong on that. When I saw him at North Dakota, he was able to step out and make those shots. But yeah, I agree with you, Eric. If they can continue to play defense the way they are, I think the offense will work. And again, we're talking about 2 of the top 3 defenses in the Big Ten that Iowa has played these last 2 nights out. Purdue, now Gary did say Purdue is a good defensive team. They are a good defensive team. But if you look at defensive ratings, let me pull it up here or defensive rankings, I should say, Purdue is actually 8th in the conference in scoring defense. So I guess the fact of the matter is they're middle of the pack. They're middle of the pack. Now, they are number 2 in scoring offense. So one would guess that this would be my prediction just by looking at those numbers. These last 2 games have been low scoring. I would anticipate Thursday's game being high scoring. I'll be very surprised if the winner scores under 70. That would be really surprising. And of course, Iowa has had that these last 2 games, but I would not expect that trend to continue on Thursday. Yakov 22. I'm assuming this question was for Gary, and of course, he answered that question. I thought it was a good crowd, at least from my vantage point at home. I mean, it was packed, right? There were probably some empty seats. Just because you sell out doesn't mean it's packed, but it looked pretty full. And again, it wasn't a game where there's lots of moments where the crowd is going to be raucous, if you will. But again, it was kind of a slugfest. You just hope that, they only get the one Saturday game in Carver this year, which is just insane. But that's what it is. I hope fans start showing up for more of the Sunday games and certainly the midweek games because, again, this team needs the crowd to be there. Ray says, Bruce Pearl, fellow coach, close coworker, is having a good year. Absolutely is. And Auburn, he's done really good things down there. Yakov 22, thank you for everybody who's on here. Appreciate the 40 people who are on here with us right now. But please, if you have not already subscribed to this channel, I'm going to keep plugging it until we hit 1,000. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers, I promise I'll leave you alone about it. So please help us do whatever you can, whatever you can think of to help us get to 1,000 subscribers. I think we're close to 900. I'd have to look back, but please help us get there. And again, like this video, hit the like button if you're watching now. That helps us out. Doesn't do anything for you. It's just a simple click of the button. So please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. We produce Hawkeye content regularly throughout the season and off season. This is a good topic. And Doug, we brought it up last night during our live show or live call-in show that we had last night. I am concerned about Iowa next year because of the loss of Josh Dix. And if you didn't hear about this, Josh Dix with it sounds like a compound leg fracture in a game late in the game for Abraham Lincoln, which is over in the Council Bluffs area. Of course, Josh Dix, a wing guy that Iowa has coming in next year, got good length, good shooting ability, but certainly past basketball. I mean, just concerned for the kid's health. And this is my understanding, and I saw a tweet about this earlier today. My understanding of this injury, it's very similar to the Paul George injury from, when was that? Maybe 5-6 years ago, somewhere in there. And of course, he came back and has been, I would say, pretty much like he was before. But I mean, look at a guy like Tiger Woods. I mean, it's taken a long time for Tiger to get back. Now it's January 21st when he injured. I was told he, according to Matthew Bain of the Des Moines Register, he had surgery. I believe Matthew Bain is still at the Des Moines Register. He had surgery today. So you hope that Josh Dix is good to go for the fall. But it might be a situation where Iowa has to redshirt him because you don't want to waste a year. You don't want Josh to have to waste a year if he's not fully healthy. But it very well could mean that Iowa needs to go to the portal and get a shooter. I mean, you could argue they need a 3-point shooter now. I don't think that's any debate. Losing C.J. Frederick really, really hurt. And you're going to lose Jordan Bohannon next year. So who's going to make threes? Who's going to make threes? And you hope that Peyton Sandfort can come along, but do you really want to put that much pressure on a true sophomore who hasn't played a lot as a true freshman? I certainly would not. So, I feel for Josh Dix and his family, but it's a two-part thing. Certainly health is a priority, but I would guess that Fran, he's human. I'm sure it's gone through his mind that, look, we're probably going to have to figure out a B plan next year if we were thinking we'd get production, especially from 3 immediately at a guy like Josh Dix. The Real Hayden says, I felt like the crowd was louder for the Indiana game, and I would assume you were at the game, the Real Hayden. Loudest crowd got today was for the military hero of the game, but didn't really get into the game today. And again, I think pace of play and just how the game flowed certainly played into that. And from my seat at home, I'd say the same thing. I thought the Indiana crowd was actually really good for not being full. you hope that doesn't discourage people. I mean, to me, listen, the team won the game and they won by double digits. So I would hope that people are inspired to return. The ones that were there today that maybe aren't normally at these games, I would hope that that would inspire them to return. I understand it's more difficult during the week, but I see schools across the country selling out arenas during the week. I'm not saying Iowa has to sell out every night, but man, it would be nice if you could get a good crowd from here on out, because you've got, I believe, if I'm doing my math right, so we've got Iowa's 4-4 now. So if I can do the math right, you got 12 games left, so six at home, 6 more home games. And hopefully hopefully no more than that, because if you got another home game after that, means Iowa missed out in the tournament and they're playing in the NIT. Let's hope that does not happen. Vincent, I like rotating the twins on the floor, always having a Murray in for offense. Rebracha was solid, but needs to stop always looking for a foul call when he loses a ball. That's fair enough. Fair enough. But he's putting in good minutes right now. And yes, I did not see this, the real Hayden. I promise I didn't steal that from you. Maybe it was Chad it might have been Chad that reported that when I saw it on Twitter. Gary, even if Iowa's real defensive efficiency rating realistically falls to 120 or so, that's still a major improvement and in a very high level hoops conference. It's an improvement from 160, but the numbers would say that you're very unlikely to make a run, a serious run. And I'm talking second weekend at least. So Sweet 16 or better. You're very unlikely to do that unless you have a top 100 defense, and that those numbers have bared themselves out over the history of KenPom's ratings, which again I think are pretty reliable. I believe Iowa last year, I'd have to look back, but I believe Iowa will actually tell you in 2 seconds here. Let me pull up the rankings from last year. I believe Iowa finished top 100 last year, Gary, but certainly, and I know it's just one game, but the tournament did not end the way you wanted if you're Iowa. Yeah, finished 75. So I'm of the belief that this team can be better than that. This is a better defensive team than last year. I mean, I just think it is. If they finish below 75, I think that's a disappointment. I mean, I think that'd probably be the goal. If you can finish top 70, top 60, again, it all comes down to wins and losses. I mean, win the game, and then. But again, if we're talking confidence level heading into the tournament, if Iowa can keep going up, but 120 is not good enough in my book. And I'm sure it's not good enough in Fran's book, but boy, these last 2 games have been very encouraging on that end. Yakov 22, do you attend any ISU games on nights that Iowa is not playing? It's a good question. I have not this year. Last year we went, did we go last year? No, there were no fans last year, right? So 2 years ago, we went to Iowa Baylor when Baylor was number 1. Or excuse me, Iowa State Baylor when Baylor was number 1. And of course, Iowa State was not good that year. And I believe that was 2 years ago, right? There were no crowds in Big 12 arenas last year. That was the Halliburton year. So yeah, it would have been 2 years ago. And so Halliburton was really the only guy on that Iowa State team. And it was it was a good crowd. Hilton's always great. But man, that was not a good team. This Iowa State team this year, I believe they lost today. I'd have to look, but I believe they lost today. But that Iowa State team is a huge jump from what they've had. And just the energy level around Ames now is back to the Hilton magic that we're accustomed to seeing. And I'm happy for him. I'm not a Iowa State hater. I'm happy for him because I think it's a great college basketball venue. But I have not gone recently, Yakov 22. I've been to football games and basketball games for Iowa State. And I don't usually go to troll, although I did go to a TCU game, TCU Iowa State football game a few years back, and wore purple. I will admit to that. I wore purple to a TCU Iowa State game maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Jordan Samuelson on Dix. Yes. Hopefully he's ready to go, but certainly the red shirt will be there for him. Yeah, 10-10, I think, is a lock. All thumbs. The early season game with Purdue was actually a lot closer than the final score, a quality loss. I don't, is the committee going to look back at that game in December and say, well, Iowa lost by only 5 or 6? Maybe because Keegan Murray didn't play in that game. So certainly having a committee that actually looks at the circumstances around that game, I don't know that it's a plus, but it may not be. I certainly don't think it's a big minus. So yeah, I would say that. I would say it's realistic to say that. I think it's realistic to say that that's a decent loss, right? It's not I don't think any loss you can say is good. not a good loss, but it's a loss that's not really going to hurt you too much on your resume come tournament time. And Iowa, I mean, let's be honest, does Iowa have any bad losses this year? Illinois at home, you don't want a home loss, but against one of the best teams in the Big Ten, that's not a bad loss. The Iowa State game on the road was not a bad loss. I'm trying to think back. Who else has Iowa lost to? Rutgers on the road, that's not a bad loss. So I don't think they have any bad losses right now. Now you could say they lack the marquee wins. Indiana at home is a good win, not a great win. It's a good win. Utah State on a neutral court might be their best win. Not crazy to think their best win. Now Minnesota on the road, that could end up being a better win if Minnesota keeps winning. They just beat Rutgers today. That will really help. But certainly any road win in the Big Ten is tough. But Iowa has an opportunity. They're going to have opportunities for marquee wins here coming up starting on Thursday. The man here says, I wonder if Coach Patterson was in attendance. That's a good question. I don't believe he was, but I could ask him. He heads to games here and there. I know they were at the Western Illinois-Iowa game, but I don't think he was at. I think he was at the Illinois game as well, but I do not believe he was there tonight. But I will ask him when we get off this show. Yakov 22 says a 16 to 16 tie right now between the Bengals and the Titans. Bill, Auburn and Kentucky looked pretty good today. Yeah, Kentucky with the big start in that game. I believe they had a double-digit lead, and Auburn storming back. Those are two really good SEC teams. I think the conferences have become a bit more even across the country. I still think the Pac-12 is behind, and that's sad because they're behind in football too, but I think there's a little bit more parity, especially with the emergence of Auburn in recent years. The SEC is not a one-trick pony. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Lomansky, Corey.
How are you, sir?
Good. Chris Murray was 13 for 19 off, or 13 of the bench points for Iowa was Chris Murray off the bench, and I think we've got some hope down the road because I think, my opinion, you're going to get what you can get from Keegan. He's the star, but I think how Toussaint and Chris Murray and Pat McCaffrey play is going to be key. Now, Patrick McAfee was the star of the game, so I think if we can be patient and get into the latter Big Ten schedule, the key to the team is going to be these other players and how they can develop in the R. And the other thing that's interesting, I think, is that I think the coach running the team and having depth can wear teams out. And I think Penn State maybe have been weak-legged and affected their jump shot. And I think for Iowa, you always got to watch the last 7-8 minutes how the other team performs. Because I think one of the neat things about this team is they have the ability to wear the other team out if they get into a fast-paced game. Now, today's game was a grinder, but I'll feed it back to you, Corey.
I agree with you. And as far as Chris Murray is concerned, I'm just a little bit surprised. I honestly, and maybe I fed into that narrative, but I thought after the Indiana game that he would really emerge and be almost that go-to second scorer, and he kind of disappeared these last two games. Didn't play a lot of minutes, which is kind of confusing, and I don't know if Fran McCaffrey was asked about that, but I am impressed with Iowa's ability to grind out games, Lomansky. I'll give you that. Right now, Iowa's playing these last five halves. They're playing a brand of basketball that I have not seen out of Fran's teams. Now, the one disclaimer that I have that I'm going to continue to hold on to is these two teams, and I'm talking Rutgers and Penn State, by the numbers are perhaps the two worst offensive teams in the Big Ten, and the numbers say that. So I'm going to hold off to the excitement a bit. However, I'll say this, Lomansky, in past seasons, Iowa has struggled defensively almost against everybody in the Big Ten. I don't care if you're worst offense in the Big Ten or not. They've struggled staying in front of people. And to me, they pass the eye test right now. Defensively, they're passing the eye test, and that's a difference. That's something that I haven't seen out of Iowa you could argue, we really haven't seen this out of Iowa in 5 years. The last Adam Woodbury, Jared Utoff team, that was the last time I remember Iowa being good defensively. They've never been great with Fran, but that's the last time I can remember them being good over a period of time. And I think they're starting to churn in enough performances where you can argue they're good defensively.
I thought Bobby Hansen made a neat comment today. He talked about the synergy or the chemistry between Keegan and Chris. And Keegan had a shot today, and Chris headed for the boards, and Bob Hanson made a point that that comes with playing a lot of ball together, and I anticipate as the season goes forward that you'll see those guys on the floor together, and Coach also made the comment that Chris is awful hard on himself, and I can kind of see where you're playing with your brother that's a star, and you know, I wonder if most of us understand that's got to be a dynamic, kind of awkward thing to, you know, your brother gets all the press and you're trying to live up to it, and
Right.
I think early in the year he was kind of hard on himself. I just think Chris Murray is to get better and better and better, and I'm kind of hopeful for the other teams outside of Keegan to perform going forward.
So, Lomansky, let me ask you a question. Are you concerned with three-point shooting? Are you concerned that Iowa doesn't have a go-to three-point shooter, especially if Jordan Bohannon is just getting locked down defensively, which we have seen? Are you confident enough in Iowa's shooters from outside?
I'm going to answer it this way. I think Iowa will continue to see the zone, and it's going to be interesting how they attack the zone. And I think just like an earlier game, they're going to have to learn how to pass the ball on the free throw line and then kick it back out again. And, you know, I think that's a good question, and it's to be determined. And that's why I mentioned Patrick McCaffrey from the outside and Chris Murray,
Yeah.
you know, overall. I think that's to be determined.
Well, and I said early in the year, Lomansky, I said that I thought Peyton Sandfort might be the second most important player from outside, just because that's kind of what I had interpreted him doing this year, or expected him to do, I should say. And he's just not playing much. So certainly I think the onus now falls on Chris Murray. And you're right, Patrick McCaffrey. But see, Patrick, to me, he's got a very unorthodox shot. Now, he made, 3 threes tonight. He was 3 of 6 from outside. So he can give you a few. But to me, Chris is the guy. He's got a smooth stroke. We've seen him get hot from outside. He was 3 of 5 tonight. I think I would agree with you. He is the guy. And because he gives you a lot more than just 3-point shooting. He is the key for Iowa. If Iowa want, maybe a difference between being on the bubble and being a team that can make the second weekend, I think is a guy like Chris Murray. And I'm not trying to put all kinds of pressure on Chris. Not that he cares what I have to say anyways, but I do think that's a factor. I think Chris Murray might be the second most important player, because right now you're getting solid production from Keegan. You're getting solid production from Philip Rebracha, but you need someone else to be able to shoot from outside. They'll get on the boards. And there are times, we saw it against Indiana, we saw it tonight against Penn State, where Chris Murray fills that need. And if he can do that consistently, this team could not only make the tournament, but make it to the second weekend, in my opinion.
I think you made some good points there. I think the other thing that's a wild card is, every Big Ten team that ends up at the end of the year winning the Big Ten or winning the Big Ten tournament has great guard play. And I think Joe Toussaint really holds a key to this team. That would be a third person I'd mention, in addition to what you talked about, that if he can be the best person he can be, he's just got that quickness that jeepers, like, BJ Armstrong. I mean, go back to the quickness of guard. We've kind of lacked that until he got on campus. And if he can just play at a high level, that's going to make a difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think defensively, that's the biggest thing with him. I mean, he's going to give you 4 or 5 assists a game, but man, his defensive prowess, he's just not going to get beat very often. And I don't mean to knock Jordan Bohannon, but you just know if you're in the man-to-man defense and Jordan is guarding on the perimeter, there's a chance that you're going to have to help, which is going to leave open shooters. But with Joe Toussaint, man, he's just, you talked about his lateral quickness enables him to guard anybody at this level. And we've been waiting for this, and he's starting, again, he's not a lights-out shooter. He doesn't have to be. It'd be nice if he could make a 3 here and there, which we've seen him do. But you're right. Collectively, this team has the pieces, I think, to be not only a tournament team, but a second weekend team. And I think, I think that's a fair estimation. Joe Toussaint, Keegan Murray might be the 2 most important players besides Keegan to make that happen.
Not that we have to look ahead, but I would like somebody to ask Coach McCaffrey what prevents Sandfort from getting more minutes, because we know he's got the trigger. We know he's a good jump shooter, and critical times he's put Sandfort on the floor for just a few minutes for his outside shooting. I I'd love to know what's keeping him from the floor, because it'd be nice to get a lead and get him on the floor so he can get experience and we can see what he's got. Because that's
my guess is first of all, if you go with Sanford, you're playing 10 guys, right? I mean, I know we played against Minnesota, but Connor McCaffrey did not. So you're going to have to play 10 guys if you do that, which Fran is probably comfortable doing. But the 9-man rotation right now is probably a good length rotation. The other thing about Peyton Sanford is I think, he even talked about it preseason that the one real big learning curve for him is on the defensive end. And so, again, he's got size. So, I think he'll get playing time at times, but he's got to rebound well when he's in there, and he's got to hold his own defensively. And I think that's probably, he admitted to that preseason, that's probably what's holding him back as of right now. But I guarantee you this, Lemansky, if Tony Perkins goes down or Connor goes down again, they're not afraid to go to Peyton. But I think he's just the 10th man in the rotation right now. But it would be nice if he could give them something, especially from behind the arc.
You asked me questions about outside shooting. I'm really watching closely what they got inside for skill and scoring. And, we've got Keegan inside to got all the moves in the world, and Rebracha's coming. I worry about a game where we need to get an inside bucket and we can't get it. And I'll let you finish and not comment anymore.
Well, I will say this. Philip Rebracha is giving Iowa 8 to 10 points a game now, at least over the last couple of weeks. He's given them 8 to 10 points a game, which you may say that's not much, and that's not he's not a guy you're going to turn to late. Fran has talked about it in press conferences that he's confident in Philip's game, and he wants to get Philip more involved offensively. And I think Philip's pretty good at positioning himself when he doesn't have the ball, and again, he's pretty nifty with the little baby hook, if you will. So. I'm not saying he's going to be Luka Garza, and that's not what they need him to be. But right now, I mean, I'd have to do the math, but he's getting around 8 to 10 points a game over the last couple of weeks. So with Chris playing bigger than he is, and with Philip Rebracha holding his own, I think they can be okay there. But it's a good observation. It's a good point too, because we have not really seen anything. We haven't seen Riley Mulvey or Josh Agundalade here for 2 or 3 games now.
You might be interested in this in your viewers. The Bengals just kicked a long field goal to end the game and won by 3. So the Titans, even though they had a home field, went down.
Wow. Well, Joe
Burrow fans are celebrating.
Absolutely. Wow. Appreciate that update, Lemansky. That's I did not expect. And did Derrick Henry play in this game?
I haven't been paying that much attention. They ran the ball a lot. I can't answer that. I wish I could, but they're doing the typical Titans thing, running the ball, and I like their head coach, but didn't work against the Bengals today.
Wow. All right, Lemansky, I appreciate the call and the questions as always.
We'll talk to you later.
All right, sir. Have a good day. And yeah, I'm surprised by that. Bengals winning 19-16. Thank you for that update. And I can see this argument, Gary. Chris Murray and Joe T, you could argue, deserve more minutes. Now, Joe Toussaint ended up with 23 minutes tonight. So, yeah, that might be, Aaron Eulis only 6 minutes. He's struggling. He is struggling right now. We saw Jordan play a little point in this game. But, yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by that low count for Toussaint. But we can nitpick all we want. Right now, this team's playing really good defense. Offensively, they played 2 of the best teams in the Big Ten defensively. Again, will Iowa's defense hold up once they play against elite offenses? And certainly Thursday is an opportunity to play an elite offense again. And Derrick Henry did play today. Wow. So, I mean, that surprises me even more that the Bengals won that game, which tells me that things are wide open in the AFC. No question about it. So, Brad, this is a good debate to have. I think it's a fair debate. He says Tony Perkins' D is, I'm assuming, greater than or more important than or more valuable than Jordan Bohannon's offense. I would agree with that to an extent. I think it just depends. I mean, Jordan Bohannon came in the second half and made, what did he make, like 3 threes? They need those threes, Brad. I mean, I understand that you're giving up something defensively, and especially when you want to play man-to-man, which I think Gary brought this up in the last show. This team's getting better in the man-to-man defense, which they have the horses to do it. Jordan Bohannon's never going to be great in the man-to-man, So you've got to match him up wisely. But Tony Perkins gives you a lot defensively, just not really much of anything from behind the arc. And he was playing really well early in Big Ten play. Those games against Purdue and Illinois, man, Tony Perkins was spectacular in those two games. Got to figure out what's going on with Tony because he's pressing a little bit. Again, he's a young guy. He's another sophomore. This is a young team. But, man, if they could get both of those guys Tony to lock in defensively, which I think he basically does night in and night out, and then certainly Jordan Bohannon, if he can consistently make 3 threes a game, that's huge. And, again, teams know how to play him, so it's difficult, but certainly he's a difference maker. All right, I am behind on the chat. I apologize for that. Let me see if I... Eric says, I thought Jordan would get more open looks moving to shooting guard, but he's been in the league for 100 years. Other teams know very well what he is capable of. Absolutely, and I keep saying I have confidence that Fran can figure out a way to get him open looks, and I think he's had some open looks, Eric, these last 2 games. The Rutgers game, he just missed some open threes. So it's going to be difficult to get him looks every possession, but you don't need him to get looks every possession. But certainly he's going to wear the other guy out as far as running around trying to man him up. Ray says Utah State is 1-5 in the Mountain West, needs some good wins. Let me look at what they are now in KenPom. I was not aware of that conference record. Let me tell you what they are in KenPom, because I believe at one time that was a quad 1 win. Utah State is still 46 in the country in KenPom. They have the 8th ranked defense in the country, according to KenPom. Let me pull their bio up here because I am curious. He said they're 1-5 in the Mountain West. Now, the Mountain West is not a slouch conference. Let's establish that. That is a good conference, but let me pull them up here. So they lost to they beat New Mexico in overtime, lost to a Colorado State team who, by the way, is really good. Colorado State is a very good basketball team. Lost by 2 to Wyoming, lost to Fresno State, lost to Boise. They're losing close games right now, but they did beat Oklahoma earlier in the year. And certainly they played a decent non-conference schedule. Lost to St. Mary's by 2, lost to BYU by 11. So yeah, it'd be great. These are perfect examples of teams that if Utah State can get on a roll here and finish in the top 2 or 3 in the Mountain West, which is going to be tough now that they're 1-5. I acknowledge that. That helps Iowa's strength of schedule because those quad 1 wins, those can be the difference between making the tournament and going to the NIT. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hey, Corey, it's the real MVP. How you doing?
Good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Congratulations on the big win, man.
Appreciate that. Yeah. I wouldn't say it was a deal-breaking win necessarily, but it was a win that Iowa needed to have. You could not afford to lose at home. Not with a sold-out crowd, not against a Penn State team that is probably going to finish in the bottom 4th of the Big Ten. So, yeah, I would agree with you. Good win for Iowa. They certainly needed it, especially after that loss to Rutgers.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's kind of, in my opinion, why it's a big win. Like, if you lose to Purdue or Michigan State, you can look at it as, oh, man, we blew an opportunity. But if you lose to a team like Penn State, it's demoralizing.
Absolutely.
So you got to do what you're supposed to do, and you'll make the tournament if you do, because other teams will trip up.
Now, the real MVP, the man here says that he thinks he saw Jackson Dart at the game. Did you see that?
I did not watch. I watched most of the Kentucky game, and I didn't see much of the game. So
well, I would take that. I would say that's probably a joke. I don't think Jackson Dart was probably at the Iowa Penn State basketball game. But we can
that would make it the first time Iowa's had a good quarterback within their facility in a while, though. So that's a positive.
Yeah. I mean, look, the sold-out crowd, I mean, that's a huge step in the right direction. I understand it's a Saturday, but I think the student section was basically full. I still don't hear the students as much as I'd like to, and I know it's a slug. It was a slugfest game is what the Big Ten Network called it, but I hope that at some point the student section can get a bit more lively because this team is fun to watch, and they play defense, which is, I think, even more fun to watch than just 100 to 102. I'd much rather a defensive performance. Obviously, you don't want what Licklider brought, but you need a team that can give you a little of both. And right now, this team is playing good defense, and the offense I think is going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you're, I know they only did it to Rutgers and Penn State, but if you hold teams to under 52 points a game, you're going to win a lot of those games.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you're a happy camper with, well, no, you're not a happy camper because Auburn came back to win today against Kentucky.
Well, yeah, we lost Ty Washington early on in the game. We were up, and he had a little floater. It was a great shot, but he landed on Oscar Sheboy's foot and rolled his ankle. And then our other player, point guard, Severe Wheeler, he's been hit. Oscar Sheboy needs to call out screens. He's been hit twice with blindside screens, and I mean, it's horrible to see him. He just falls down, and it's scary to see.
Yeah, and I haven't answered this question from Gary, not to cut you off there, Drill MVP, but Iowa State did lose today. So Iowa State falling at home to TCU 59-44. So you want to know about offensive woes and offensive struggles. Iowa State is dealing with offensive struggles right now. And I said it, maybe nobody remembers that, but several weeks ago, Iowa State was undefeated, but I said they're going to struggle to score points. And right now they're struggling to score points. Say that again?
TCU's not a great team.
No, probably not great. But they are 13-3. But
yeah, but it's a little deceptive. I mean, they haven't played juggernauts or anything.
Yeah, they lost to Baylor. They beat Oklahoma by 1 in overtime. They beat Kansas State. They beat Texas A&M. They beat Georgetown. Those are some good wins.
Yeah.
But you're right. They're not they're probably middle of the pack in the Big 12.
Right. I'd put them on the same level as Oklahoma State, for example.
Well, right now it's looking like Iowa State's going to be on that level because Iowa State is now 2-5 in the conference. Holy cow! I did not realize that 2-5 in the conference.
Yeah, if you're an Iowa State fan listening to this, some alarms need to go off because you're not going to get in on that pace. So
they got to score some more points.
Yeah, 44 would cut in football, but not basketball.
Yeah. It's kind of like Iowa and Rutgers on Wednesday. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So, did you see any of the Kentucky-Auburn game, Corey?
I did not. I was following the score a bit, but I did not actually get to see the game in full.
Well, they've got this tall 7'1" guy named, I forget his name, but he's 7'1", and man, he just out-muscled, out-strengthed everybody. And then Jabari Smith, I knew we were in trouble when we doubled him with Grady and Wheeler on him, and he still hit a jumper over 2 defenders. I mean, kid's unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
If you need to see him play, like he's that good.
It's going to be a fun tournament. There's some seriously good players across the country that aren't getting much of any attention, and I don't think any dominant teams. I think the tournament's going to be really, really fun, and you're going to get, I would anticipate by late March, you're probably going to have, I'm not going to go on the record on this, but my guess is that COVID is in a much lower place as far as the numbers, which is going to allow the tournament venues to feel comfortable letting in full capacity crowds if they aren't now. My guess is they'll do that in late March. The tournament's going to be fun this year.
Oh, yeah. Well, I saw Andy Kurt's bracket that came out on Friday. Currently, you guys would be playing West Virginia in the first round as a 7-10 matchup.
And
I think that would be a good game.
We're the 10.
Huh? You're the 7.
Oh, Iowa's the 7? There you go. So if Iowa goes 10-10, like I said, they're a lock. I mean, if they're 4-4 right now in the Big Ten, they haven't really beaten anybody in the top fourth of the conference. If they're being projected as a 7 now, they are absolutely in at 10-10 in the conference.
Yeah. And I mean, there's some of the mid-major teams are starting to, fall off a bit. San Francisco isn't looking as good. Loyola Chicago lost today. So in terms of that aspect, Drake's losing to Northern Iowa. So there might not be as big of a mid-major push as there was last year.
There's not going to be a lot of bid stealers, is what you're saying.
Right. I think COVID played a large part just because you had to play within your own conference for the most part. And you saw this in football too, where you'd have a bunch of undefeated conference teams, but then they go play an average mid-major team. They'd lose by like 14 to 17 points.
Right.
So.
Yep, it's going to be a fun March.
Yeah. Do you think you have to beat Penn State again after the Purdue game.
Well, it depends on what happens in the Purdue game. I mean, no, neither of these next two games for Iowa are must wins, in my opinion, because you're at 4-4. If you lose these next two games, you don't want to lose both of them, because certainly the one game, I know it's against Purdue and it's at home. I mean, honestly, I could see any result. I could see Iowa going 2-0 these next two games. I could see them going 0-2 or 1-1. But the bottom line is, if you end up being 4-6, let me look at the schedule after that. So going into February, they get Ohio State on the road. So yeah, I mean, if they lose to Penn State, there's a good chance they're going to lose 3 straight in total, because they'll have lost to Purdue, Penn State, and Ohio State. Now they get Minnesota at home, Maryland on the road, Nebraska at home. So that's an opportunity. I think they could potentially, if they lose 3 straight, which you don't want that to happen, but if they were to lose 3 straight here coming up, they could then win 3 straight and get back to 7-7. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So no, I don't think next Saturday's a must win, but certainly it'll help if you can win it. I mean, and it really helps if you can beat Purdue on Thursday.
I mean, if you all beat Purdue on Thursday, I wouldn't go as far as saying you're a lock, but I would put you probably in the 90% range of being in, unless some cataclysmic event happens where you lose to Nebraska twice and just completely fall off the wagon.
Yeah, and I don't see that happening with this team. And again, Nebraska is the only team that you could say would be a bad loss. If you lose to Nebraska at home, that's probably not good. But there's no other teams in the Big Ten that even a home loss, I mean, there might be losses that aren't considered good losses. But, I mean, even if you lose to Minnesota, Northwestern, or Maryland at home, those aren't terrible losses. And they've already gotten by the home game against Penn State. So, and the home game against Maryland for that matter. So, no, there's not a ton of opportunities for bad losses left on the schedule. There are, however, good opportunities for really good wins.
Yep. Purdue and Michigan State being the 2 games.
And Ohio State on the road.
Oh, and Ohio State, yeah.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
I'm gonna shift gears real quick.
Sure.
I did do what you told me to do. I looked up Deuce's highlights, and I'm impressed. And he did it against the Scouts. I couldn't find anything against first or second team refs. I found Scout team refs. So I'm happy that we got him. I mean, he's a free player, basically.
For anybody who's not aware of what you're talking about Deuce Hogan, former Iowa quarterback, transferring to Kentucky as a walk-on, because you're a Kentucky fan, for anybody that not aware of that. Yeah, I mean,
so I'm happy we got him.
How could anybody complain about getting him off scholarship? I mean,
And he can complete those deep balls and stuff. I could see some, if we play Florida or Tennessee, we play Ole Miss, we play some hurry-up team. I could see him potentially being slotted in a wide receiver for a double pass or something like that as a trick play type of thing.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think he's going to start because Will Levis is coming back.
No, he's not going to start this year, but he's going to, I mean, he can go into this and say, look, I got a year to prove myself. And if I prove myself, I could get a scholarship and compete for a starting spot the following year. That's a realistic expectation.
I think he'll probably get the starting. I mean, Kentucky doesn't have a great history of quarterbacks. And even with Will Levis, his one weakness is deep balls. And this guy seems to throw good deep balls. Now, it's based on scout team. And, not everybody's going 100%. But at least he's hitting them.
Yeah. I wish him all the best. I'd love to see him succeed at Kentucky.
Yeah. And the reason why we got him, I mean, if you're Kirk, you got to know better than to make fun of your players. Don't do that.
Yeah,
I know he was joking, but
yeah, he wasn't trying to make fun of anybody, and I think he felt bad about it later. But those are mistakes you can't really make. Just
listen. If he's a first-year head coach or something like that, I can kind of give him a pass.
No, I
Kirk's
agree with you.
Been in this too long.
I agree with you. I called him out for it. I thought it was inappropriate, and I give him credit. I mean, everybody makes mistakes, and he stepped up and apologized, but I think the damage was done, and there was a chance that Deuce Hogan was going to leave anyways.
Yeah,
but that sealed the deal.
Right. So.
Yep.
Well, Corey, congrats on the win, and good luck to the rest of the season.
All right, sir. Appreciate the call as always. Have a great weekend.
You do the same.
Always love hearing from our Kentucky fan who's a supporter of the channel. Thank you, DeReal MVP. And so apparently there are more COVID issues at Nebraska. I I really haven't been following Nebraska basketball. But according to Ray, he says the mayor, I'm assuming you're talking about Fred Hoiberg, has them locked down. So, yeah, I did see the game today was postponed. I didn't know if that was because of I didn't know if that was what are you talking about here? Nebraska, and who were they supposed to play today? Was it Ohio State? I think it was Ohio State. I'm not going to try to find it here. But yeah, that game did get postponed, and we'll see if the Big Ten can get all these games made up. I mean, I thought they could do that last year, and there were a few too many games that were postponed, but certainly an opportunity for a team like Nebraska to figure things out. I know they're in lockdown, but Nebraska right now is 0-8 in the Big Ten, so maybe. I don't want to downplay COVID, but I mean, it's an opportunity to kind of just take a breath, regather yourself, and hopefully get those games that have been postponed made up, because the Big Ten is a grind. And certainly, there's no question about it that at times you're going to have moments where you're fatigued, and especially when you're getting pounded. I mean, Nebraska not only is 0-8 in the Big Ten, they're 6-13 overall. They lost to Western Illinois earlier this year, so that's a struggling Husker team. But best wishes as far as health to all of them, and hopefully they get back on the court soon, because you want to see the entire Big Ten schedule played. I don't think Iowa's going to win the Big Ten regular season title. That's probably not going to happen, right? They're 4-4 right now. That's probably not going to happen, but you want to see all the games played, and you want to have a true champion. Absolutely. Need a mental reset. Grant says, what do you think the ceiling of this team is? I think they have the potential to make a deeper postseason run than last year's team because of their better defensive play. Well, here's what I'll say, Grant. I definitely think that Iowa will make the tournament. I'm at that point now where I'm pretty confident in that. But it's also possible that they don't make the tournament. They could end up playing in the NIT. I mean, if they've got 12 games left. So if they go, if they go 4-8 or even 6 and what would that be? 6 and 6 gets them in. If they end up 5-7, I think they're on the bubble. But 4-8 is not going to get you in. So I think the ceiling of this team is whatever they make of it. I mean, this team. I mean, again, it all comes down to draw and matchups in the tournament and postseason play. So, like last year, Iowa could have made the Sweet 16 or Elite 8. The defense wasn't what it needed to be, but the Oregon game was just a bad matchup because Oregon exploited those weaknesses, and they exploited them big time. But I think this team has an opportunity, Grant, to play down those weaknesses, so to speak, because, again, they've got athletes that last year's team didn't have, or at least it didn't have the athletes that were comfortable playing 20 to 30 minutes a game that this team has. And again, assuming they get a better draw. Now, if you're a 7 or 10 team, or you're an 8 or a 9, as you know, if you're a college basketball enthusiast, you're going to be playing a 1 seed or a 2 seed in that second round. So I'm not going to sit here and guarantee a Sweet 16 berth. But if Iowa keeps winning, you can improve seeding. And I think if you're ideally, you'd want to be off that 7 line. That's a tall order because Iowa is just 4-4 in the conference. But if you can pick up some good wins, maybe you can get to a 6 seed or a 5 seed. I have a hard time seeing Iowa do any better than that. I'll just be happy if they're in. Now, if you're not going to be a 5 or a 6 seed, I'd rather be, if this makes sense, I'd rather be an 11 or 12 seed. Right now, I don't want to play in the play-in game, but I'd rather be an 11 seed because who would I play then? You'd play a 6 seed following by a 3 seed, conceivably, right? So I'd rather be an 11 seed than I would rather than 7, 8, 9, 10. Hopefully that makes sense. As far as potential, though, a team that like Iowa that has explosive, an explosive offense and gets up in transition and has good guard play, which I think Iowa has right now. I'd like to see a little bit more scoring from outside from Iowa's guards. But again, they've got good guard play, and a team that's explosive and plays defense does have more potential. I don't know that I'd go so far as to say they have more potential than last year's team, because last year's team was just stacked with shooters. But defensively, it still wasn't what it needed to be. And right now, this team is starting to turn the corner, it seems, against inferior competition. So we'll see what happens on Thursday. And again, the next Sunday, they get Penn State again. So Again, I'm still skeptical, but they got 2 months left, or a little less than 2 months now, to secure what we hope is a tournament berth and a good seed in the tournament. Good question, though. Very good question. Okay. I apologize if I didn't get to your questions, and I saw a couple questions, and I'm not seeing them now. And if you can see what I can see, it's sometimes hard to go back and find questions. So if you asked a question and I didn't get to it, I apologize. If it's an important question, then feel free to leave it in the chat here, or again, give us a call. We'll stay on for about 3 or 4 more minutes. The number to call in is 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. And a reminder to everybody, let me pull up the schedule here. Iowa, of course, back in action on Thursday. So let me paste this up here. And of course, we'll be live after the game with Coach Gary Close, breaking it all down, what we hope to be another win for Iowa. But on the 27th, which is Thursday, game will tip in Iowa City at, I believe, let me pull this up here, 8 p.m. So it's an 8 p.m. game, and it'll be televised on FS1. So 8 p.m. for Iowa and Purdue. And, of course, the game will be on FS1. We will be with you following the game with Coach Close for Iowa postgame here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And, of course, this podcast, along with all of our podcasts and all of our on-demand content, is available from the Hawkeye of the Storm on not only here YouTube, but also on Spotify, Anchor, Amazon, wherever you listen to your podcasts. So I want to throw this up on the bottom line here. From the Hawkeye of the Storm, our podcast through Spotify, Apple, Google, and more. And again, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Iowa, again, with the 68-51 victory over the Penn State Nittany Lions. Iowa moves to 4-4 in the Big Ten with a big-time showdown with the Purdue Boilermakers looming on Thursday. We'll talk to you then.